Minister, was this a lot of time, expense, and drama over very little? The curriculum has not changed dramatically.
We think the updated curriculum actually has been improved dramatically. I would submit that
How?
when we're adding elements of mental health for the first time in kindergarten, with the recognition that young kids in that age increasingly are facing signs of depression because of bullying and other manifestations in their lives. When we introduce vaping, which did not exist in the 2015 curriculum because more people are turning to vaping as an alternative to smoking. When we introduce new elements on cannabis, because in the 2015 version, legalization under the federal Liberals didn't exist. And now it's legalized and increasingly normalized. So we've included robust knowledge about the cognitive impacts, adverse impacts of consumption of drugs, particularly of cannabis. When we look at concussions, we never had any reference to that physical health element for concussions. We're now one of 2 provinces in the nation that do that. I would submit that we have made material changes to improve the health and safety of kids. The overarching message for me, the priority for me in my new capacity as minister, and I know my predecessor shared this conviction, it's about safety. It's about keeping kids safe in and outside the classroom, giving them the tools to remain safe, and giving them the self-confidence to identify when victimization takes place. And I think that is a material change. We've improved it, we've maintained some elements, but I think we've materially strengthened every single area and included new elements that didn't exist.
But what I was referring to, for example, was the sex ed part of the curriculum, gender identity. I'm sure you saw the massive protests by social conservatives who were decrying it. Parents didn't want it taught in the classroom. You've changed that element from grade 6. Now it will be taught 2 years later in grade 8. It's not a massive change. Are you walking a fine line to appease both sides of the equation here? And was it much ado about nothing? A lot of, hand-wringing about something that really hasn't fundamentally changed that much?
I think, well, first off, on identity, there's a prompt in grade 7 and it's being taught in grade 8. I think the reality is we want young people in this province to know that irrespective of their faith, of their heritage, or their orientation, their economic status, or their place of birth, that they are valued and they're respected. And they should feel safe in the classroom. And that's the message I want every child in Ontario to know. And I feel that very strongly because...
But is this all about politics? Yeah. I mean, Doug Ford won the leadership with the help of Tanya Granick-Allen, who was vehemently opposed to the sex ed curriculum. She's calling him a liar today, saying he's backed down. Is this all politics?
I think this is about safety, in fact. I appreciate that some would make that argument. For me, I don't see the world through hyphenation. I think we're all one citizen. We choose to live in this society, in this country, where the values of freedom, of difference can be accepted, but we are stronger because of those differences. And I want kids in the classroom to know that they're respected.
Then why push it back 2 years? What about a kid who's starting to question their sexual identity and orientation? Why wouldn't they be taught this in grade 6?
Well, in fact, for orientation, as you mentioned, we actually dropped it from grade 6 to grade 5. We moved it earlier on orientation.
But identity.
Yeah, and because we accept that young kids will identify as LGBTQ members, and we want them to feel safe. We want them to know that they have a role to play in the classroom.
But identity is later.
With respect to, I think it's important to appreciate that the curriculum is a scaffolding approach. So in grade 3, we start to introduce the idea of visible and invisible differences. We start to introduce that concept that it doesn't matter, the person's identity, for example, that they have human dignity, that they should be respected. In grade 5, we moved a year earlier orientation. In grade 5, we introduced respect, which deals with almost exclusively homophobia, so that we remove that bias, that prejudice that exists for individuals in the classroom. So we are doing this at every step of the way. We teach consent now in grade 1. In the earliest years, we moved that dramatically down in the 2015 version, just for young kids. It's age appropriate, but for a young child to know that they have boundaries for their bodies, and they need to be confident to identify to their authorities, to their parents, if something bad is happening to them, if they're victimized. So we think that this document is inclusive. It respects parents' wishes. And to the question of why we did this, why we undertook this. We did this because under the former government's version, we don't believe, and I think parents accepted this judgment, that it listened to their values, that it gave them a say. They think that it was, someone imposed on them. And I think the version we've brought forth seeks the license, the perspective, the concerns, and priorities of parents that are manifestly in this document, from mental health to cyberbullying to cannabis use. In all those areas, we've seen a dramatic strengthening or new additions, and it's a positive step in the right direction. But every child should know that they are respected. This curriculum, I think, validates that concept.
Was it a fine wire balancing act, trying to sort of find the middle ground to appease parents who are on either side of the issue and have very different opposing views on it?
I just think all parents in Ontario overwhelmingly could feel that this document, I think, will respect their child. If they have an exceptionality, a disability, if they are a member of a certain minority community, if they're new Canadians, every child in this document should see themselves. And that was my vision, that was my predecessor's vision, it was the Premier's vision, and I think we fulfilled that mandate by releasing this today.
Would you agree that this is very similar to the Liberal curriculum, but you've made some tweaks and, in your mind, some improvements, minor improvements?
Yeah, I would say this is a dramatically improved, strengthened version that manifestly is different. It includes new elements like cannabis knowledge that didn't exist given the legalization. It includes new elements from vaping to opioid use to consent in the earliest years, mental health in kindergarten. I mean, I think it's actually a different document. It is a better document. It is an inclusive roadmap for knowledge when it comes to physical health in the province of Ontario and sexual health in the province of Ontario. And I think most dramatically different is it seeks the perspective, the wisdom, and the ideas that parents gave us guidance on. That's what I think differentiates us. We sought the priorities of parents, we listened, and we've improved. We built a plan that I think that actually fulfills that objective.